I've tried to film this video like 4 times now, so if I seem a little frustrated, that's why. But let's just get started. Hi everyone, my name is Morgan. This is my channel Pisces Paperbacks, and today we're going to be doing my August wrap-up. I love doing wrap-ups. I love talking about the books that I've been reading when I've had like time to digest them. So I just want to like get right on in. I read 13 books and I really liked most of them, so I'm very excited to talk about them with you. The first book I read in August was A Thorn in the Saddle by Rebekah Weatherspoon. This is an amazing contemporary romance. Comes out in October. I can't wait to buy my own copy. I'll put the release date like on the bottom of the screen here. And this is about Jesse. He is the oldest brother in the family. He's run the family business for years. He's kind of like the rock. Everyone's really depends on him to like kind of hold it down. And he's struggling because he feels like everyone in his life is, you know, getting married, getting into relationships, moving on, and doesn't really need him as much anymore. So he's trying to figure out what he wants to do now that's like actually for him, you know? And then Lily Grace has just moved back home. She's living with her dad, and she's just left an extremely toxic relationship as well as a job where she was experiencing harassment. And so she's deciding, like, I've always been a very confident, self-assured woman, and I've always had a plan, and I don't know what to do next, you know? So when Jesse and Lily Grace, their paths cross, they decide to help each other out with figuring out what each of them individually wants for their future, and if it happens to be each other, then maybe they're gonna fall in love. I loved this book. I would say this is one of the best like romances that I've read in a really long time, in terms of like, before I even saw these characters interact, just reading each of their individual first chapters separately, immediately I was like, I understand how these characters need each other, fit together, will support each other. I understand how their personalities would mesh. I understand how their wants and needs are going to complement each other so well. And then when they first interact, it's, you know, something of a high tension situation, and then as they get to know each other, it's just like, oh, the chemistry, the attraction. It was too much for me. It was so good. This is a third book in the Cowboys of California series. You do not need to read the first 2 to read this one. I did not read the first 2. There's like a bit of like info dumping right at the front with about everybody else's relationship that came in like, I guess, previous books, but the info dumping goes away pretty fast and it doesn't affect the rest of the story. And the cowboy thing is also not very heavy. As we know, I'm not a huge fan of Western romances, but this was like, basically, if I didn't know that it was part of like a cowboy themed series and I had no idea what the cover looked like, I wouldn't have guessed that there was like any particular cowboy theming here. You know what I mean? I will also say that the given synopsis, like back of the book, Goodreads synopsis, places a lot of emphasis on Jesse considering a job, like running for public office, running for government. And I would say that that is an extremely minor subplot, like extremely minor subplot. I don't know why they put the emphasis on that in the series or like in the synopsis. It's very weird to me. And then also content warning for discussions of sexual harassment in the workplace and like stalking-ish behavior from Lily Grace's ex-fiance. And yeah, 5 stars. Can't wait to get my own. Speaking of books that I gave 5 stars and then I couldn't wait to buy my own copy of, take a hint, Dani Brown. I bought my own copy. This is the second book in the Brown Sisters series by Talia Hibbert. I don't know if I said that. And it is phenomenal. It is so good in so many ways. I'm obsessed with it. So this is about Dani, and she is a badass bisexual woman. She's not down for relationships. She loves friends with benefits, one-night stands. She's just not a romance kind of girl, you know what I mean? And she is friends with Zafir, or Zaf, and he is the security guard at the building where Dani teaches at university. He's a romantic. He loves romance novels. He runs a nonprofit where he coaches rugby and teaches the boys he coaches about emotional literacy and mental health coping skills and, you know, how to fight toxic masculinity. And he's just a cinnamon roll. And one day there's an evacuation drill at the school and the building where they both work, and when Dani is trapped in an elevator, Zafir very heroically rescues her, and a video of it goes viral. They decide to kind of like fake the relationship and like do like a little bit of press for this viral video when they realize that it's actually getting a lot of really positive attention and support for Zaf's rugby program. And the way Zaf loves Dani, it's like, it makes me cry, it makes me emotional, it makes me feel like love is real. I read this book, and I read most of it in one sitting in one night. I think I read the entire second half in one night, and it was literally just me sitting there screaming into the book, like in the middle of the night, so very quietly screaming, for hours. I can't even begin to describe to you the feelings that this book brings out in me. I can't wait to read the third one. This is definitely my favorite between the two of the Brown sisters books that I've read. Get a Life, Chloe Brown, also extremely good. I haven't gotten my copy of that yet because I didn't have it at the store when I was buying these books, which kind of sucks. I can't wait to read the third one because I've heard it's even better than this one, which I find hard to believe because this is perfect. The next three books I'm going to talk about pretty briefly, or at least I'm going to try, and that's because I talk about them pretty extensively in my reading horror books vlog. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Rules for Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall. This is a YA horror. It's kind of like mixed media where there's traditional narrative as well as like transcripts of interviews and videos and stuff like that. This is about a group of friends who go into the woods and discover this road, this magical road where there's specific rules that you have to follow or you die or something horrible happens. And they're doing this because they believe if they go down the road, they'll find one of their sisters, one of the people in the group, her sister, who went missing a year ago, and they believe that the sister went missing going down the road. This was very good, very creepy. It gave dark, twisted fairy tale in a way that the Hazel Woods by Melissa Albert did not, and I really liked it. I thought the horror aspects were really, really well done. I think the relationships and the bad relationship developments were the weakest part of this book for me. So I'm gonna give it like a low 4 stars, but I did really like it. And then I read A Human Stain by Kelly Robson. This is a very short novelette about a turn of the century set, so like historical, about a woman who's hired by a friend to go to his family home at a castle in Germany and look over his recently orphaned nephew. And it's very creepy. It's supposed to be like a gothic horror, body horror situation. I didn't love this book. I thought that there were some genuinely creepy parts towards the front end, but then I feel like it's supposed to be one of those situations where like everything's this cycle and it all gets wrapped up with a ribbon and the creepiness is how perfectly everything lines up again. And I just didn't think it did a very good job lining everything up. So I'm gonna give this one a 2. It just wasn't my favorite, even though I do like the cover. And then I read Eat Your Heart Out by Kelly deVos. This is a YA zombie book about 6 teenagers at a weight loss camp, Camp Featherlight. And one day they wake up and it seems that everyone has turned into zombies except for them. So it's kind of like a survival story where they're trying to get out of this camp and get back to civilization. But they're also like figuring out what happened and why everyone is a zombie now. And I really enjoyed this book. I thought that the characters were so interesting and unique and individual, and besides the fact that there are 6 narrators for the audiobook, so there's a different narrator for each of the main characters, each of the POV characters, even beyond that, they each have a very distinct voice, at least I feel like, so I really enjoyed that. I love zombie things because, let me rephrase that, I love zombie things because there's really just 2 ways you can take it. You can go like hardcore serious, there are fucking zombies, this is scary and bad, right? Or you take like the lighter approach and it's like zombies are very scary, but there's also something funny about them and about the situation, like being in a situation where there are zombies, which I think is like kind of like the Zombieland take, which is one of my favorite movies. Like I love that movie. So I feel like this book really hit like that lighter tone while still being like serious. Like it's not like a straight up comedy, you know what I mean? But I really enjoyed this book. I think that Rules for Vanishing and Eat Your Heart Out are probably on par in terms of like writing quality and like story quality, but I just like enjoyed Eat Your Heart Out more. I thought it was more of like a romp in terms of like the plot, you know what I mean? So I really liked it, and yeah, That was a good time. Then I read Midnight Sun by Stephenie Meyer. Oop, that's upside down. And this is Twilight from Edward's perspective. I gave it 5 stars. I also made a very long reading vlog about this one, so I'm not going to talk about it too much. There's really not much to say that I haven't already said. 5 stars, gonna put it down now. Next, I listened to the audiobook of Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford. This is a memoir about her experiences growing up with a father who was incarcerated for her entire young life. And it's also about her experiences growing up in her relationships with her mother and her grandmother, and her relationship with herself as she kind of like processes traumatic things that have happened to her during her life. And I liked it. I gave it 4 stars. I think the writing was really, really nice. I just struggled because I feel like in some ways I felt like it was a little directionless, because it is a memoir about Ashley Ford, but she's, I believe, only in her 20s, or maybe she's in her early 30s still. And the book was, okay, this is how I'm gonna say it. At the end of the audiobook, there is an author interview, which was actually really, really good. I loved the interview, would recommend the audiobook even for that specifically. I thought it was really, really good. And she talks about how when she initially pitched the book, she pitched it as a memoir talking about her relationship with her father, right? About him as well. And she was in the interview, she was like, and I realized that if I wrote this book, it wouldn't be about me. Like, it's my memoir, but it's really not about me. It's about my dad. And so instead of that, I wrote this book and it is about me. And it is actually my memoir, processing my feelings, processing my history, processing my traumas and my triumphs. And that is absolutely true. This book is about her. But I will say that the synopsis of the book still, I think, heavily pitches it as a memoir of her relationship with her father. And he is primarily absent from the book for the majority of it, which, I mean, also reflects her experiences as, you know, a child and young adult. She really didn't have a relationship with her father because he wasn't there. And so it's like, yes, he also wasn't in the book, but it was a bit misleading because I feel like he is still used as like a pitch in the synopsis. You know what I mean? Did I enjoy it? Yes. Would I recommend it? Yes. Was it like my favorite memoir I've ever read? No. That's why. On a lighter note, the next book I read was Marion Lane and the Midnight Murder by T.A. Willberg, and this is a historical mystery. It's kind of like steampunky because it is about Marion, and she's been recruited to be an apprentice at Miss Brickett's Investigations and Inquiries, which is a secretive detective agency that was founded after the end of World War II. So they operate in these tunnels underneath London, and it's kind of like sci-fi-y in that it's 1958, but they have like a lot of like really advanced technology, almost like James Bond gadget level stuff, but if James Bond was like more Sherlock Holmesy than spy-y. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the vibe. So the plot of this book is that one of the employees of Miss Brickett's is murdered one night and something is stolen from her. And when it becomes clear that only someone who works at Miss Brickett's could have been the culprit or the murderer, Marion starts to investigate herself, especially since her mentor has been framed as the murderer. So she kind of gets involved in this big old mystery, and I really liked it. I spent the first solid half of the book like very, very sure this was going to be 4 stars because it was just so fun. It was just so fun and quirky. And then at about the 75% mark, the last like quarter of the book, I struggled. I feel like there were way too many plot elements that were introduced and I didn't know where they were going. And I feel like for a book that was like pretty tight for the first like so much of it, it just kind of like went in every direction for no reason. I also feel like I really liked Marion, okay? I think she's a very compelling main character, and I think a lot of the times when people are like, I need a strong female main character, they go in the route of like very outspoken, doesn't follow the rules, kind of like bold, loud, I don't give a fuck, I think is the direction that a lot of people go, and I love that as well. But I really like Marion because she's very intelligent, but she is like a rule follower, and she wants to gain the approval of authority figures, which I feel is like very relatable, and like breaking the rules to investigate this murder is like a very big deal for her. So I just really like her. I think she's very interesting, but I struggled with the secondary characters, because I don't think that they're as well developed, especially her best friend, Bill. He's a large reason that she gets involved in the investigation in the first place and start investigating together. And he's just very involved for like the first half of the book. And then for the second half of the book, there's another male side character who kind of becomes her main investigative buddy, and he's also fine. I also liked him, but he's not super developed, and I just feel like if Bill was going to be so important for the first half of the book, why did he completely disappear in the second half of the book? It was just very strange, and it definitely doesn't tie everything up nicely in that it's like for sure not a standalone. There's a second book coming out. It's called Marion Lane and the Bloody Rose. I think it comes out early next year. So yeah, 3.5 stars. Then I read The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu. This is what I mean when I say like people kind of often go in like the I don't give a fuck direction for female main characters. Ropa in this is definitely that, and I loved her. She is the best thing about this book. She's smart and interesting, and she's dropped out of school, but she likes education, so she like listens to audiobooks, and she like likes to read, and she's just very intelligent, but she's very like, fuck you, I need my money, get me my money before I do a thing for you. And so she is a ghost stalker. This book kind of takes place in a world where people know that ghosts exist, so people know that like magical things happen and people can study magic, but it's also like set in our world, like 50 years in the future, post some sort of like war. So Ropa is a ghost stalker. She talks to ghosts and she delivers messages for them, from them to their loved ones and from their loved ones back. And one day a woman approaches her and she's like, something happened to my son, he's missing, and he went away with a boy, and the other boy came back, but there's something wrong with him. Something's happening to the children. Please find my son. And Ropa's like, you don't have any money. I'm not going to do anything for you. And it happens a few times before Ropa's grandmother is like, hey, maybe it's just like good to do good things for people. So she starts investigating like what is happening to the children of Edinburgh, and kind of gets sucked into like the underbelly even more than she kind of already was. And I struggled with this book. I think Ropa is really cool. I really liked her relationship with her family. I thought that was really, really sweet. And I like some parts of the magic. I really like when she's talking about using her, I don't know how to say it, Mbira, to communicate with ghosts through music. And I really love that. I struggle with the pacing. I think the pacing was hard off. It was like, I don't even know. Everything moved extremely fast, so nothing was really given time to like marinate. For example, the Library of the Dead is a real place in the book. It's not just like a cute name. It's a real library that they go to, and Ropa's not supposed to be there. Her best friend has a job there, and he's like, I will get in so much, I'm not supposed to sneak people in. It's like a members only situation, but he eventually sneaks her in, and there's about half a page of her walking around and going wow before they're caught, like straight up, and then she's like kicked out immediately. She comes back a couple more times, but it's like barely in the book at all, it feels like. And then there is, for some reason, in the back end, there's like a 50-page long sequence where she's like trapped in a house. Nothing happens, and maybe it wasn't even that long, but it felt so long. And then when you get the final reveal of the villain, it's someone who, there was like a pretty big hint, like one large hint early on that this person was the bad guy, but when they literally never showed up again, I was like, oh, it can't be them. It's probably not them. It is. They just never show up after the first time, except for like the very last sequence of the book, and then it's just obvious. And I just don't know. I'm really sad about this. I had extremely high hopes. I just had a feeling I was gonna love it. I'm very sad that I didn't. I don't believe I'm gonna be continuing the series, which makes me sad, but it is what it is. And then the last 4 books that I read this month were all part of like the same novella series, and it's the Winterbourne series by Joanna Chambers. So the first one is like a super short, like 57-page novella called Introducing Mr. Winterbourne. It's about Lysander. He is the second son of the Earl of Winterbourne? I don't know, some sort of nobility, and all he wants is to learn how to manage the family estate. He loves the country, he loves his home, he cares about the people there, and his parents are just like, no, I don't think so. That's not a good enough career for our child. So he's just very kind of sad about the direction his life is going, and then, okay, this is very convoluted, give me a second. Lysander's sister is getting married to someone named Simon. And Simon's family is wealthy because his father ran mills. So he's not nobility, but he's a businessman. But they're very, very wealthy. Wealthier than the Winterbournes because the Winterbournes are in debt. And Lysander's dad has a deal with Simon's older brother that his brother Adam will pay off the Winterbourne family debts. Adam comes into town to talk to Lysander's dad, and his dad is like, you need to give Adam like the tour of London, make him really like us, okay? And so they do. It's kind of like they're stuck together, they're forced to hang out, so it's almost forced proximity, but not quite. And then they kind of fall in love over the course of one day, a little bit. So it's a little insta-lovey, but they don't say love. It's more of like they fall into each other. It's 57 pages long. What do you want me to say, you know? It was good. I give it 4 stars. And then the second book is a continuation. It's kind of like a sequel. It's called Mr. Winterbourne's Christmas. This takes place 18 months later. And I guess it's like a spoiler for the first book, but like, is it? Like, it's the first book is 57. You know what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Basically, Lysander and Adam have been living at Adam's estate for the past like year and a half. Lysander as the steward by day and their lovers at night. And both of them are very insecure that the other person is just there because it's like a very good situation and it's convenient. Neither of them have said I love you yet. I know it's almost 2 years in, but neither of them has said I love you yet. And then they're forced to basically confront that when they go back to Lysander's family's estate for Christmas that year. And I really, really loved this one. I think it's my favorite of all 4. I really, really loved like the mutual pining and insecurity and then like the eventual relief when they both kind of admit their feelings, you know? Very good. 4 stars as well. And then the third one is actually a prequel. It's called The First Snow of Winter, and it's about Sam and Jasper, 2 characters who are extremely minor and don't really show up anywhere else. Basically, Sam and Jasper's families were family friends. They saw each other a lot growing up, and the last time they saw each other was 5 years ago. Sam kissed Jasper and then ran away. He just left him standing there. So it's 5 years later. Sam has joined the military, been a soldier, lost a limb in combat, and has come home. And he's going to see Jasper for the first time since they kissed. And it's just about them coming back together, discovering new possibilities for their future. And it was very sweet. It was 60 pages. I gave it, 3 stars. I don't think it did anything crazy. It was just very, sweet. It was good. And then the 4th one is The Labors of Lord Perry Cavendish. This is the longest one out of all of them. It's like 170 something pages. And I liked it a lot, but I was also very disappointed. I don't know if that doesn't make any sense yet because I haven't talked about it yet. But basically, this is a book that I bought the series to read. Like, this is the book that got like advertised to me on Amazon as like a Kindle deal. And I read the synopsis and I was like, oh. And then I bought the rest of the series because it was only $6 for all 4. So I was like, that's fine. Basically, this is about Perry. He's one of Lysander's closest and oldest friends. He's kind of a meathead. Like, people don't think of him and expect good conversation, Like, he's big and he's physical and he's not much of a talker. And he's kind of been struggling with the direction of his life lately. So he decides to go to Lysander and Adam's house and just kind of like stay with them for a while. And while he's there, he meets Adam's very good childhood friend, Johnny. Johnny is a painter. He's very effeminate. He is basically as much of an openly gay man as you could have been in the 1820s. He has just gotten out of an attachment with someone who came to dislike him for the aspects of him that he found so attractive at the beginning. So specifically his effeminate nature, how, kind of needy he is, how talkative, how focused he can become on his art. So he's become very self-conscious of these aspects of him that kind of like make him who he is. And he's like, no relationships. I need to get good with myself before I can do anything with anybody else. But he instantly is attracted to Perry, and Perry's instantly attracted to him, and they kind of have an encounter. And then the rest of the book is kind of them denying and then accepting their feelings for each other. So on one hand, I really liked the book. I thought it was well written. I thought the characters were really interesting. I thought it was really sweet. I love an introvert extrovert dynamic. But I also was disappointed because I would say the bulk of the book is them like purposely avoiding romantic involvement with each other because they hook up so early on and then they hook up at the end. You know what I mean? And then that middle part is like the denial section, but it's most of the book. So it was like the parts that were romantic were so good, and then the rest of it, like, nothing happened. Like, fully nothing happened, which was a little disappointing. Either way, I gave it 3.5 stars. And that's all of it. That's all 13 books I read. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, what you thought of them. Let me know, what did you read this month? What was your favorite book you read this month? I'd love to know. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!